Hi, I'm Robin. Thank you for tuning in. This is another part of our series on anxiousness, subclinical anxiety, and associative anxiety disorder. There will be a link to the previous video. If you haven't checked it yet, have a look. Now, it's extremely common in clinical practice to encounter patients of various age groups to be affected by different degrees of anxiousness, subclinical anxiety, and associative anxiety disorder. Today, we are talking a little bit more about what I define as the latter, the associative anxiety disorder. This is where it's having a significant impact on people's quality of life, whether people experience panic attack or anxiety attacks, or whether certain situations that they're really just not comfortable getting into, and was also a strong physical impact of that. This video we're going to talk a little bit less about strategies and a little bit more about where is it coming from, and another model where understanding how the brain works helps understand those processes in the body as well. And when those processes are understood, it's a lot more likely that we can find a solution for that person, either through the work that we're doing in clinic here or through referral to another specialist who has training and dealing with this kind of condition. So as we are entering a new environment, our brain is going almost through a checklist of what it is assessing to figure out whether we're safe or whether we're unsafe. And anxiousness is a feeling that often arises when a sense of safety is not established. And with the associative anxiety disorders, oftentimes it is a lot less about the current situation at hand and a lot more about something that the person experienced previously in an earlier stage of life, and which was overwhelming to an extent that they were not able to cope with that based on the strategies that were available at that point. One of the key things to note about debugging that is that it is extremely helpful if we can find a way to trace back where it's coming from. A lot of people who are impacted by it already know that. They know there is a significant initiating event, but it is still about really being able to make the situations right now in life workable while still being able to integrate what happened previously. I'm going to give you a more practical example. So let's assume we're talking about a situation where there was a public performance, like a piano recital or a play or something that created anxiousness in that person, or giving a presentation at school. And there's discomfort associated with that situation. There's fear of embarrassment associated with that situation. Maybe there was actual humiliation that happened as well, or failure or other things. And the brain will make sure that that memory is cemented in the brain to make sure that if we're encountering a similar situation in the future, that we already know, okay, we have to protect ourselves here, this is potentially dangerous. And the brain will save all kinds of information about the environment and the contexts when it happened and commit that to memory. As one example, if we're talking about a performance or a presentation, there might be really bright lights. And then later on in life, I might be walking into a meeting room where I don't have to give a presentation and I'm not in a spotlight necessarily, and there's bright lights in the meeting room, and this is something that gets recalled from memory, where all of a sudden I'm getting anxious in meetings and I don't know why, because my brain has that one association with a previous danger, and now it's retrieving that from memory and making sure that I'm protected right now. This is one simple example. This is not something that applies in every case, but just to see how those associations can sometimes be completely removed from the actual situation that happened in the first place. So this is the first thing to understand. The brain saves associations, and if an association gets triggered even without the actual thing that causes the anxiousness and the fear, it can still bring up anxiousness and fear, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, things like that. So it is important to know all the different components that might have contributed to it in the first place, so we can start debugging that. Now, the second thing that I wanted to talk about is that checklist that the brain is going through whenever we're entering a new environment. There are four things that we're going to talk about today. Number one, is there an actual, tangible, physical threat? Then number 2, is the situation I'm entering, is that an unknown? Number 3, is there an inconsistency in the environment and the people that I'm interacting with? And number 4, do I know that I'm going to be in a situation where I'm not going to get my needs or values met? So let's go through these one by one and get into more detail for each step. Physical threat. So imagine you're 2 years old and you're in the supermarket with your parents, and you're 2-3 feet tall, and there's an actual if just an adult comes around the corner with a shopping cart, I could get pushed over. That's an actual physical threat. And then all of a sudden later in life I can be anxious being in the supermarket, even though that's not a thing anymore. But I have to, whenever I'm entering a new situation, is there an actual physical danger that I have to protect myself from? That's an important thing to go through in the checklist. Similar thing with the situation in a meeting. I might be encountering somebody who's in a management position who is a very tall, physically strong person, and they get very animated or very angry, or they throw documents around or bang on the table or something like that. This is something that I can recognize as a tangible physical threat, and as a result of that there's anxiousness that comes to the surface. Now the second thing, something about the unknown. Again, when we are younger, when we are smaller, we have that mechanism in the brain where when we're getting in a new situation, I have to make sure that this is a survivable situation. And if it's an unknown situation that I'm encountering, the brain will go through everything that in my life up to this point has not quite worked out the way I wanted it to work out. Because when I'm in an unknown situation, some of that might happen again. So again, it's a protective mechanism to make sure that anything that possibly could go wrong, that I'm protected against that. This is why a lot of people don't deal with the unknown very well, because that part of their brain is very strong and very animated and really getting in that assessment process and oh God, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if that happens? Again, we can go through individual memories and then repattern and remap some of the previous experiences so that previous situations that didn't work out can turn around, and that there's evidence in their life, okay, actually, if there is a different way to gain different perspective on it, we can give people strategies in the here and now to be able to cope with that better as well. So physical threat, unknown. The next one is a little bit more difficult to explain. It's the inconsistency with the environment and the people within. As children, we have a very good sense for nonverbal communication and whether somebody, with what they're saying and what they're feeling, whether that's congruent. So whether a parent is upset and angry with us, but they're actually really calm on the outside, we're still able to pick up on kind of what's going on underneath. Or if somebody who we don't know is really nice to us and trying to lure us in a van with our favorite candy or something like that. Children do have an ability to pick up that what's happening in the context and what's going on underneath, that something about that is not quite right. And so later in life, and this often happens when we grow up in the family where there was inconsistent communication, or in bad cases abuse or domestic violence or other things, or where there's a lot of secrecy, where you constantly had to be careful with, well, what is being told is not actually the truth, and I can feel that there's something else going on underneath, but I can't quite put my finger on what it is. And so then whenever you're interacting with a person in adulthood, and for whatever reason they're not quite real with you, they're not quite authentic with you, your spider senses are going to start to tingle, and you will have to be very aware of there might be a potential danger because that person is not honest with me, and they might not be lying. They might have had an argument with their own partner and they're upset with somebody else and they're trying to hold that anger inside, and then when we're talking to me, I can pick up on that anger even though it is not related whatsoever. But this is again still something where an association with something else can make us hyper aware of that nonverbal communication and something that's going on underneath. So physical threat, the unknown, inconsistency in the environment. And the fourth one is whether we know that we're going to get into a situation where we're not going to get our values met. For example, if I'm a kid and I like playing video games and I like talking to my friends and I like bouncing around, and then I have to go to school and I already know I have to sit there, I have to be quiet, I'm not going to be able to play Fortnite or my other video games, but I'm stuck there and I have to listen to something that I'm not interested in. That by itself, I have to shut down who I am. I have to shut down my authentic expression of what I want to do. And if I'm not doing that, then I'm getting scolded, and already knowing that I will be sitting there stuck in a situation that I don't have to be in, that can bring up anxiousness. Or the adult equivalent, if I know it's going to be a boring meeting, I'm not going to be able to extract any value from it, I still have to be present, I'm expected to be there, but it's not really going to get me anything. I know that this is something I don't want to be in, I'm not going to get my values met, and just the anticipation of that can bring on anxiousness, anxiety, fear, and then lead to our body, our nervous system getting dysregulated. So this is what I wanted to focus in more detail on today. It was more of a casual chat. The bullet points that I talked about, this is the established neuroscience as to what the brain is going through, but this is more simple language in terms of explaining what's going on. If you would like to receive more information, ideally come in for an assessment, come in for a checkup. If you know somebody personally, whether you're affected by it or if you have a friend who might benefit from it, please pass that on or send them along for a consultation. My name is Robin, and I hope that we get to see you soon here